Welcome to the deep dive. We are cutting through a lot of noise today to look at something that's really changing global health.
A huge shift.
A huge shift, yeah. The integration of artificial intelligence into medical diagnosis and clinical decisions.
Right. And the hype is, well, it's off the charts.
It is. I mean, machine learning promises this revolution in healthcare. You think about instant analysis of complex scans, personalized treatment, early disease detection. It's all supposed to enhance speed and, patient outcomes.
That sounds perfect.
Hmm.
But there's this massive chasm between that promise and the reality of how it's being deployed.
Okay, so what's the central problem?
It's the complexity of the models themselves, especially the deep neural networks. They're often what we call black box systems.
The black box, meaning you can't see inside.
Exactly. The opacity means that even an expert clinician, a doctor, they struggle to understand how the AI got to its conclusion. And if you can't see the reasoning, you can't fundamentally trust the advice.
And that creates a confidence gap.
A critical one for practitioners and for patients.
Okay, so let's unpack that. Our mission for this deep dive is clear. We have to pull back the curtain on this black box problem. We need to look at how effectively, or maybe ineffectively, companies are actually being transparent, and then analyze the new safety and liability concerns that are, frankly, escalating with these new AIs.
Precisely. And the research community really agrees on the path forward here. It's something called Explainable AI.
XAI.
XAI. And it's not just a buzzword. It's a whole suite of techniques designed to give you clear, human-understandable insights into the AI's reasoning.
So it's about making the AI show its work.
That's a great way to put it. It helps the clinician understand, it promotes patient trust, and at the end of the day, it supports safer, more accountable care.
So what does that look like in practice? We're not just talking about a developer dumping a bunch of code, are we?
No, not at all. We're talking about things like SHAP or LIME. These are techniques that show you which specific features, which pixels in an image, say, contributed most to the final result.
So on a scan, it would highlight the suspicious area.
Exactly. A saliency map might light up the exact cluster of pixels that led the AI to flag a tumor. It gives the radiologist immediate visual verification, not just some abstract probability score. XAI is that necessary bridge.
That makes perfect sense. And yet, our first set of sources suggests that bridge isn't being built.
Not even close.
Let's start with this trust crisis, because the data shows a huge gap between the ethical principles companies talk about and what they actually disclose.
It's a really harsh reality check. Researchers recently looked at 14 CE-certified medical AI products in Europe. These are radiology tools, Class I, so they're considered medium to high-risk devices.
Okay, so not trivial applications.
Not at all.
Yeah.
And they just scrutinized the public documentation. The transparency scores they came back with were, well, they were astonishingly low.
How low?
Ranging from just 6.4% on the low end
Right.
up to about 60.9% on the high end.
6%. I mean, if this tech is so revolutionary, why is it all so secret?
That's the big question. The median score was just 29.1%. And this isn't a technical failure, it's a disclosure failure.
Yeah. The choice.
It feels like a choice. And the gaps were consistently in 3 areas. First, almost no documentation on the training data.
What does that mean exactly?
They didn't say where the data was collected, when, what kind of machines were used, all crucial details. Second, ethical documentation was scarce.
Like patient consent.
Patient consent, GDPR compliance, and crucially, any information on how they monitor for safety or potential biases in their data.
And you said there was a third gap.
Caveats for deployment. This is so important for a doctor. If the AI was only trained on data from, say, one big hospital in one city.
Its performance might be totally different in a rural clinic with older equipment.
Exactly. And if the documentation doesn't state those limitations, the black box isn't just opaque, it's actively misleading.
And this opacity, the secrecy around training data, it connects directly to the biggest risk we see in AI right now.
Algorithmic bias.
Algorithmic bias. We know these algorithms just learn correlations. So if the data is unrepresentative, the AI becomes a flawed reflection.
It becomes a vector for scaling up existing health inequities. The classic example everyone uses is the melanoma detection algorithm.
Right. Trained on light skin.
Trained predominantly on images of white skin, and it fails, sometimes dramatically, when it sees melanoma on dark skin because the visual patterns are different. And it just hasn't learned them.
And our sources show this isn't just about race, it's systemic, it's geographic.
Oh, absolutely. A huge portion of the AI training data, especially in the U.S., comes from just a handful of states. California, New York, Massachusetts.
Or single institutions.
Or single, huge academic medical centers. Think of the MIMI database. It's a fantastic resource for critical care algorithms, but it's all from a single ICU in Boston.
So if you build a tool on that narrow slice of the world,
It will inevitably underperform when you try to apply it to a community hospital in a different state with a totally different population. That failure to generalize is bias.
so the AI is like a mirror reflecting these biases we already have in our healthcare system.
Yeah.
But you can't audit the mirror if you can't see what's going into it.
And that's the scary part. That European study, the most concerning finding was about monitoring.
What did they find?
Information about strategies for monitoring data quality, potential biases, or fairness. It was unavailable for all 14 of the products they reviewed.
For all of them.
All of them. They are deploying these medium to high-risk tools with zero public assurance that they're even looking for bias, let alone correcting it. It's deploy first, ask questions later.
That's a massive failure. Okay, let's pivot. We've been talking about specific single-task AI, like for radiology.
Right.
But the new frontier of risk seems to be large language models, LLMs. Why are these general-purpose systems raising such different and maybe more immediate safety alarms?
They're a whole different animal because their greatest strength is generating plausible, authoritative-sounding text, and that's also their biggest flaw.
They sound right even when they're dead wrong.
Exactly. They can synthesize a complex clinical case and spit out advice that sounds perfect but is, fundamentally dangerous. That's what led to the no harm study.
And what did that study set out to do?
It specifically tested LLMs in various clinical scenarios to measure the actual tangible harm they could produce.
And it confirmed they do produce harmful errors.
It did. They categorized them as severe, moderate, or mild. And they found two key types of errors. Errors of commission.
Which is actively doing something wrong.
Right. Recommending the wrong drug. It's like actively giving a poison. But then there are errors of omission.
Failing to do something necessary.
Yes. Failing to recommend a critical test. It's like failing to give the antidote.
And which one was more common in the severe category?
This is the surprising and, frankly, the critical finding. Errors of omission, the missteps, accounted for a staggering 76.6% of severely harmful errors across all the models they tested.
76%.
Yeah. So it fundamentally changes how a doctor has to use these tools. You're not just watching for a bad suggestion. You have to be vigilant about what it misses.
This is where the analysis gets really provocative, especially when you bring in this metric they used, the number needed to harm.
The NIH, yeah.
Yeah. Explain what that number actually means for a hospital thinking of deploying one of these.
The NIH tells you how many cases you need to run through the model to basically guarantee you'll see one instance of severe harm.
So a lower number is worse.
Much worse. In the study, the models range from an NIH of 4.5, that was the worst one, to 11.5 for the best.
So even the best model is causing a severe harm every 11 or 12 cases.
That's the math. It's a serious risk calculation. But the comparison point, the reference model they used, that's the statistic that should be headline news.
What was the reference model?
Is a no-intervention model. It did the same thing every time. It just recommended reassurance only. Basically, it told the doctor to do nothing.
And how did it score?
It produced fewer severe harms than every single LLM they tested. It had an NIH of 3.5.
Wait, so doing nothing was safer?
In some high-risk scenarios, yes. Relying on the LLM was statistically more dangerous than having a physician just do nothing at all. It just shows how systemic errors in these complex models can quickly outweigh the benefits.
Wow, okay. If I'm a hospital executive, that metric isn't just a curiosity. That's quantifiable litigation risk.
It is. And beyond these big errors, the models also suffer from what researchers call fragility. They break under stress.
What kind of strange behaviors do you see?
Well, one is shortcut behavior. The model gets the right answer on a clinical question, but it does it by picking up on textual cues in the prompt, not by actually analyzing the image or the data it was given.
It's cheating on the exam.
It's cheating. The other is hallucinated perception. This is where the model provides very accurate sounding, but totally fabricated reasoning. It just invents facts to justify its output.
And all this complexity means you're constantly making trade-offs when you design them, right? You can't optimize for everything.
You can't. There's this tension between safety, completeness, and restraint. For example, they found restraint. So not recommending unnecessary tests was strongly and inversely correlated with completeness providing all the necessary actions.
So the more comprehensive you make it, the more likely it is to overdiagnose.
And drive up costs and patient anxiety.
Yeah. The research suggests The solution isn't one single perfect model.
So what's the alternative?
It's likely multi-agent orchestration. You combine different models, maybe an LLM with a tool like a retrieval augmented generation system or R.
And what does RAG do?
It basically grounds the LLM's output in verified, up-to-date clinical documents before it gives you an answer. It helps stop the hallucinations. Layered systems just seem safer than one big model.
Okay, let's connect all these technical risks to the legal framework, to liability, because this is where things get really practical. This is where the rubber meets the road.
If an opaque AI system makes a mistake, say one of those emission errors, who is on the hook?
It's a paralysis of accountability. You have three parties: the doctor on the front line, the hospital system that bought the tool, and the company that designed the algorithm.
And they're all subject to different legal standards.
Completely different. The physician and hospital are under medical malpractice law. The designer is usually under product liability law.
And in a typical malpractice case, you have to prove the doctor didn't meet the standard of care. How does the black box change that?
It makes it immensely complicated. Let's say an error of omission happens. The patient's lawyer has to prove either that the algorithm itself was defective or that the doctor should have known it was untrustworthy and ignored it.
But how can you prove the algorithm was defective if you can't see inside it?
You can't. When the developer has a public transparency score of 29%, proving a defect in the training data becomes almost impossible. The black box shields the developer and pushes all the risk onto the doctor and the hospital.
That's a real policy dilemma. You want innovation, but you have to have accountability.
That is the core tension. If you increase liability on developers too much, you could stifle innovation. But if the framework is too weak, patients are left with no recourse, and doctors are forced to use tools they can't audit.
And regulators are stepping in.
They are. The FDA, the EMA, they're treating these as medical devices. But that alone doesn't solve the messy displacement of our traditional liability systems. We really need clear legal precedents.
All right, let's move to our final section, the path to trust. Given all these safety risks and transparency failures, what's the consensus on how we bridge these gaps? It sounds like it has to be a human-centered approach.
That is the overwhelming conclusion. Policymakers, experts, they all agree we need mandated human integration.
What does that mean in practice?
It means federal agencies should require that clinicians are involved throughout the entire development lifecycle, not just at the end for testing.
So from day one.
From day one. Defining the clinical tasks, validating the XAI outputs we talked about, and setting clear standards for that handoff between the AI suggestion and the doctor's final call.
And this is key to fighting what some people call the lazy doctor effect, right? The automation bias.
Precisely. If doctors just passively accept every plausible-sounding AI recommendation, they risk losing their own practical skills over time. It's called catastrophic forgetting. The system has to be an assistant, not a replacement.
Oh, okay, so that's during development. What about after the AI is on the market? We saw that pre-market testing is not enough.
We need mandatory, continuous oversight. The FDA and other bodies have to require clear labeling about how and on whom the device was tested, especially across subgroups.
And post-market surveillance.
Yes, post-market surveillance, or PMS, is crucial. These algorithms are not static. They get updated, retrained on new data. The PMS has to create a feedback loop where real-world performance data is constantly tracked and used to inform those updates.
And that surveillance has to include mandatory bias audits.
It has to. That goes right back to that finding that none of those European products disclose their bias monitoring. That has to change.
So you find a bias. Then what?
You do a root cause analysis. You mitigate it immediately. Or maybe you have to change the device's label, restrict its use to certain populations. In a worst-case scenario, if the risk is too high, you take it off the market.
This sounds like a global push is finally underway to bring AI oversight into the mainstream.
It is. You see bodies like the WHO issuing guidance on life cycle risk frameworks, defining risk tiers based on clinical impact. It's very similar to the EU's AI Act. The era of deploying AI without transparent, ongoing accountability is hopefully coming to a close.
This has been a monumental deep dive. To summarize the key takeaway for you, our listener, AI holds this undeniable transformative power for medicine. But its responsible, widespread adoption hinges entirely on fixing these transparency and accountability issues right now.
To reiterate that, AI is a powerful tool, but it is absolutely a dual-edged one. It enhances care, but it also acts as that mirror, reflecting and even scaling the inequities already baked into our healthcare data. So things like explainable AI and human-centered design, they aren't just nice-to-have features. They are foundational requirements for preventing patient harm.
And that leaves us with the final provocative thought for you to consider. We know regulators are taking action, but the ultimate measure of trustworthy AI, it might not be how well it diagnoses a disease. It might be whether the regulatory mandates for public transparency, things like detailed training data documentation and mandatory bias audits, will ever become a legally enforced reality. Because if a median transparency score right now is 29%, there's a universe of safety gaps hidden just beneath the surface, waiting for the law to force them into the light.